Thank you very much, Joel. Let's pick up here. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the introduction of independent power producers in his State of the Nation address last week. However, Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe says a plan for a new power utility is quote-unquote a reality. Now, some experts say the renewable energy is the way to go. Now, I'm joined by Professor Mark Swilling for more on this. Prof, I know you are one among those who are rooting for the renewable energy route, but I want to start you off here. You wrote some time ago that Eskom is in a death spiral, and that's because of the 450 billion rand debt that it is in. How should the Finance Minister deal with this question come Wednesday?
Well, the Finance Minister firstly needs to just reconfirm that the fiscus is going to stand behind Eskom as it has done before, because that commitment to providing budgetary support to gradually deal with the debt is a critical part of the solution, but it's not enough on its own.
There is uncertainty, Prof, about COSATU's proposal, whether or not it is on or off the table. And you will know exactly what I'm talking about, and that's the use of workers' pensions to at least halve that debt of 450 billion rand. Are there any other credible funding proposals at this stage?
Well, firstly, on the COSATU proposal, it's not appropriate to call it workers' pensions because that's extremely emotional. The PIC manages investments in a large number of state-owned enterprises within South Africa and is already exposed at 84 billion to Eskom, and it's the biggest lender. So the PIC has to think about how it's going to get that money back for those workers. And that might mean investing further, like everybody else is going to have to invest further. But as far as other deals on the table, last year you might recall that the Presidential Task Team on Eskom did propose what was called a just climate transaction, which would be the mobilization of international climate finance. So that's the other big proposal on the table that was discussed extensively last year.
Let's come then to the question that you want to address, and it is around the Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe announcing that there is going to be this alternative power utility. Is this the solution to our energy crisis, Prof?
Well, I mean, he mentioned it at the mining in Durban and hasn't really come up again. So it's not clear what he means, and the Eskom CEO as well as the ANC said they were a bit. His officials in his own department said they were surprised about the proposal. So I'm not sure we need to take it that seriously. But I do think we need to accept that renewable energy going into the future cannot just be delivered by independent power producers, because just purely relying on private sector delivery of renewable energy is not going to do the trick. So there will have Eskom or some variation of Eskom as it gets divisionalized is going to have to play a role.
Prof, I don't know whether I want to agree with you that Mr. Mantashe should not be taken seriously, because the President tells the nation about, addresses the whole energy crisis in his State of the Nation speech, but he fails to mention this alternative power utility. It is after that speech, which is why I think people are kind of getting obsessed with the Mantashe issue. It's after that speech that the minister held a media briefing and again spoke about this alternative power utility being quote-unquote a reality.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think of Eskom unbundling into a generation entities, transmission entity, and a distribution entity, and that paving the way for some kind of privatization, which is what COSATU is worried about, then that kind of entity doesn't make sense. However, if you think of Eskom moving into a divisionalization, which is what the CEO is talking about, where you would create publicly owned entities, not just one centralized one, but a range of one, in particular a transmission entity, an entity to manage the buying and selling of energy, then maybe in that context, what he means is a public sector entity that is going to be a key driver of renewables as well as other forms of new generation capacity. Maybe that's what he is referring to, but a lot of people in the sector are worried about, there's a lack of detail. It's unclear exactly what it means. So it's difficult to take it seriously until we have some details.
Yeah. Just as a final question to you, Prof, and briefly if you can, you speak in your piece about the decommissioning of coal-fired power stations over the next 20 years. How is this going to affect energy supply in our country?
Well, according to the integrated resource plan that was adopted by Cabinet and announced publicly towards the end of last year, there's a detailed schedule which outlines exactly how much power must be decommissioned per year, taking us through to 2041, when there will be only 2 power stations left, Budipe and Kusile. We cannot replace coal-fired power with more coal-fired power because it's too expensive and no one will give us the funds. So we have to invest in renewable energy on scale. It's the cheapest, it's the fastest, and it's the most reliable. So that's basically what the integrated resource plan says. It does say that we must add 1,500 megawatts of coal-fired power, but no one's going to fund that. So the future is renewables. COSATU is saying that, business is saying that, most of government is saying that. Internationally, that's where the rest of the world is going. So we just have to catch up to the 21st century.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for those insights, Professor Mark Swilling, Skyping with us from Stellenbosch. And of course,